Hello, I'm Mary Bryant, and today we are featuring Iowa City Hospice on today's Notable Nonprofit program. And so I'm talking with Maggie Elliott, the Executive Director, and Sarah Neary, the Volunteer Coordinator of Iowa City Hospice. So let's start off talking about the mission. Maggie, could you talk about that?
Sure. Thank you for having us on your show,
Well, thank you.
Mary. The mission of Iowa City Hospice is to provide care and support to those facing a terminal prognosis. This is our 30th year of service to the community, and our founders had a strong mandate to provide that care to anyone in our community who was suffering or who was facing a terminal diagnosis. They wanted to make sure that that could be provided to anyone in our community, regardless of their ability to pay or the complexity of their disease, the age of the individual. So we are proud that 30 years later we are still true to that mission and providing care to anyone in our community who needs our services.
So can you tell me a little bit about what those services are and who do you provide it to?
The majority of our services are provided to individuals over the age of 65, simply because, and thankfully because, that's the folks in our community who need our care. But our care is available to anyone, regardless of the age. So we take care of people, of babes coming home from the hospital who are facing a life-limiting diagnosis, up to, over 100. And people of any diagnosis are eligible for hospice care. So at one point in time, the majority of patients that hospices cared for in this country were cancer patients. But that's not true today. Less than 50%, probably about 30% of our patients have a cancer diagnosis.
Okay.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
The services that are provided too it's a team approach, and so hospice care is very holistic, and so each patient gets a care team, and I kind of call the captain of the team is the nurse case manager. So the medical diagnosis and the medical needs, along with the care plan and the life goals of the patient and family are kind of first and foremost, and guide the team's the team's work that they do with the family. But psychosocial needs are very important at end of life for both patient and family. So every patient has a social worker. Spiritual needs are very important at this time of life, so every team has a chaplain. We also have, sort of complementary services like music therapy, and within our volunteer pool, we can offer a wide range of services that range anywhere from compassionate touch and massage therapy to, writing your life story, taking family photos. So, really try to bring our care, the compassionate care, to the whole person and the whole family system.
I've seen, I think on your website that you have some bereavement counseling.
Absolutely.
And support for the family as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about some of those resources? Sure.
And Iowa City Hospice has done so much community education about grief and bereavement issues. So hospice care provides 13 months of bereavement follow-up for every family for the patients that we care for. And part of that is to account for all of those first anniversaries. That first year after the loss of a loved one can be really tough. And so we're there kind of every step of the way, following up. We have 2 bereavement counselors on staff. One is mainly for the follow-up with the patients and families, and she uses volunteers also. The other bereavement counselor does a lot of education in the community and leads support groups in the community. So Iowa City Hospice, I feel, very generously shares their wealth of knowledge about the grief and loss process with anyone in the community who has suffered a loss, not just our patients.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is the Honoring Your Wishes program, is that part of Iowa City Hospice?
That was an initiative that was started by Iowa City Hospice, but it's now, I like to consider it a community initiative. It's owned by the whole community, but it had its home, and it has its home now at Iowa City Hospice, but it is a community initiative.
Okay, can you tell me just a little bit about that, just to give us a little overview of what it is?
It's an extension of what many of us would think of as a living will, or an advance directive. So what we're learning is that as much specific and detailed information that we can provide our care providers about our wishes, given certain tragic or urgent chronic illnesses, the better off we'll be. So honoring your wishes is a very it serves as an advance directive. So it's a living will. It tells people how you want to be treated if you were unable to speak for yourself given a tragic accident. And then the initiative further, the reason it's community-wide is because we want it to be part of everybody's medical record, regularly updated, also targeting people of all ages. So anybody over the age of 18 is encouraged to consider these questions. Mm-hmm. And as you can imagine, it can be a difficult conversation to bring up, or a difficult sort of concept for a young person to think about. But having that down has just proven to be such a gift for the family. When you don't want to have to get to that situation, and hopefully not, you won't have to, but having that roadmap of how you want to be treated at the end of life is very important.
We have a lot of community volunteers who've been trained, and they've gone through hours of training on how to have those conversations and discussions with people. So if anyone would like to go through that, it's free in the community to anyone in the community. They can call the Senior Center, or they can call Mercy on call, and just schedule a free counseling on that, on honoring your wishes. And it's a community event also because it involves all the hospitals in the community, all the emergency folks in the community, that communication of between hospitals of what someone wants and where it's documented. So the whole community is coming together to really make this so that people's wishes at end of life are honored and respected.
Okay. So if your services are all provided for free, how exactly is Iowa City Hospice funded?
The majority of our funding comes from Medicare, because most of our patients, over 90% of our patients, are of the Medicare age. Some people have a hospice benefit as part of their insurance plan. For instance, if you had Wellmark, some of the Wellmark policies have a hospice benefit. There are a number of folks in our community who don't have insurance, or that their insurance might not pay for everything that's needed at end of life. And that's where the community has just been such a gift to Iowa City Hospice. They allow us to provide what's needed for people at end of life and not what their insurance company pays for. So the Walk for Dignity that we'll be having on Sunday, April 21st is part of that. People's generosity, people go out and get donors for being a walker. And their generosity will help pay for, example that I can think of is, we had an individual who had insurance, but his insurance wouldn't pay for a hospital bed. And that hospital bed just was enough to allow him to stay in his home at end of life. So it was for very little money. What a huge gift to be able to allow that gentleman to stay at home at the end of his life. And it was really because the community was there that allowed him to do that.
So how can people support Iowa City Hospice? You said the community does it. How else can they do this?
We get a lot of our donations through memorials, and okay. You'll see that in the paper. Leave your memorial donation to Iowa City Hospice, and I especially appreciate that because I feel like that's a nice way to say thank you to the community. But the Walk for Dignity is Sunday, April 21st. It will be a beautiful day. Forget this cold weather. It'll be a beautiful day. And we usually have about 1,000 people at the Willow Creek Park on that day. And that includes dogs. We have a lot of dogs.
Yes, very pet-friendly event.
We have a lot of volunteers, and the volunteers are our honorary walk families here.
So the Walk for Dignity, I guess we'll just segue right into the Walk for Dignity.
Let's just talk about the Walk for Dignity.
Yeah. is it's an opportunity for people. I think of it as a bereavement, almost like a bereavement ritual or ceremony, because anyone is invited to come and walk in memory of someone that they've lost. So again, in its generosity, Iowa City Hospice kind of extends the invitation to everyone. You don't have to fundraise. Of course, it's wonderful if you do. A lot of people who, especially who have family members who have had loved ones in Iowa City Hospice care, will form a team. Like I've got a volunteer that, in honor of her grandma, they form Team Little Lady, because that's what they called her. And so then they raise money through the First Giving site. You know, there's an online site where you can go and just create a team and create like a portal to raise funds. So you know, people really get into it. They develop T-shirts, and they, you know, they really use it as a time to honor the people that they are missing and loving and remembering, but also, you know, as a way to pay back Iowa City Hospice. But every year, a family is selected to be the kind of, you know, honorary family. They lead the procession, and you know, I'm not sure the criteria that they're chosen for. I think sometimes, you know, they might just have a very unique story that highlights or represents some aspect of our care, and of course, their willingness to promote Iowa City Hospice in that very public way and share their own story. So, you know, that's how part of how they make the decision. But this year, because of our 30th year, and because of the, you know, the integral part that volunteers have played in the initiation and the development and ongoing nature of this organization, that's one very small way that we can honor them. So this year we're all going to be wearing the same T-shirts. It's going to be this color. On the back of the T-shirt it says, "After 30 years, Iowa City Hospice volunteers still the heart of Iowa City Hospice," because they're kind of the heart and soul and life's blood. And we'll all be walking at the front together in, you know, memory of those we've served, or just in honor of the mission of Iowa City Hospice itself. So come join us.
And do people need to register ahead?
They do not need to register ahead if you know, if they just want to come and walk. You know, and you don't even have to create kind of a you know, a structured fundraising team. Lots of people bring, you know, their piggy banks or their envelopes that they've gathered from their friends and families, and just bring their donations to the walk if that's what they want to do.
Great.
You can come as a team, you can come as a single person. We like to say it's an opportunity to honor, remember, and celebrate. As Sarah said, it's really not only a fundraiser, but it's a way to honor and remember those special people in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's just so much to say. The other thing that I want to point out, though, is that it takes place at Willow Creek Park, and it starts at a very special site that was created by Iowa City Hospice volunteers to honor Iowa City Hospice volunteers. There's kind of we call it the Willow Creek Trail site, but it's kind of it almost looks like a little meditation, you know, whatever side little cave area. I mean, off to the side of the trail, it's paved with bricks, and all those bricks have the names of an Iowa City Hospice volunteer that served for the first 15 years of our existence. There's beautiful stone benches and plaques, and a beautiful marble representation of our logo in the middle. So it's a very meditative spot, but it's also celebrating the volunteers. And that's where at the Walk for Dignity we have a wreath, and each person who comes, who chooses to, can sign the name of the person they're walking in memory of and tie the ribbon on the wreath. And if you came to the Iowa City Hospice office, you would be, you know, there's just millions and millions of ribbons hanging from hundreds of wreaths representing all the people who have been remembered during the walk.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can we talk more about volunteers?
Yes.
What sorts of work can a volunteer do for Iowa City Hospice?
You wouldn't believe it. If you do it, we can use it somehow. I mean, Iowa City Hospice has a wide variety of volunteer opportunities, and basically they break down into people who want to work directly with patients and families and people who just want to support the organization in the office or administrative fundraising. We also have ambassadors, people who are willing to speak publicly to promote the organization. I deal mostly with the patient care volunteers, so those are that's the population that I know the most about. In order to be a patient care or patient support volunteer, I have to undergo a Medicare required training that takes about 14 hours. So, you know, it's a pretty steep time commitment, and we go over a lot of the mission and the services and some of the things we're talking about today, but then also really going in depth with some of the diseases they'll see and what to do at certain times and family dynamics around end of life. Just trying to prepare the volunteers as much as possible for what they might see as they enter this very intense, you know, time in people's lives. It's a very intimate, sacred time to be just meeting someone, you know. A lot of our volunteers have had, you know, hospice experience in one way or another. Either a family member had hospice, or, you know, they knew somebody who had a very good experience. So they all come with that, you know, real core desire to just provide care and support to people. I often say, this has kind of become my theme for training volunteers, is we do very ordinary things during an extraordinary time. So, you know, we do the dishes, we sweep the floor, we'll fold some clothes, we'll sit with somebody and hold a hand, we'll sing songs with them, we'll, you know, cut up their food. So it's very simple. But because it's during this time that, you know, people are so vulnerable and needing support, that it just takes on this huge meaning. It's very impactful for the families and also for the volunteers. They feel very needed and useful, and pretty consistently will say, get back more than they give. But that being said, within the patient and family support, there's just a million, there's a whole spectrum of things. We call them subgroups. You know, people can get further training and kind of almost develop an expertise in a certain area. So for example, we have 11th hour volunteers, and those are people who are willing and are not afraid to be with someone who is actively dying. A lot of times if somebody's in the nursing home, family's not available, or family is simply not wanting to be there or unable to be there, or maybe can be there but don't want to be there alone, they'll request 11th hour volunteers to just come and sit and be there with them. We have volunteers, a program we call Volunteers Supporting Veterans, which is providing more kind of targeted education about some of the issues veterans can face as they're facing their own mortality, and doing that life review. And, you know, some of their traumatic, maybe combat or military experiences are rearing their ugly heads, you know. And it's, again, not volunteers aren't going to fix that, but an informed presence is important. We have volunteers that support the pets in the home. Oftentimes, you know, if somebody's declining in health and they need to move from the home to the nursing home, you know, they'll be separated from their pet. So if we can provide support that allow the patient and the pet to stay together a little bit longer, that's just that much longer they have to share with that very special being. You know, anybody who's an animal lover, I don't need to say anymore, you know. So, I mean, really the list goes on. We have legacy, we have volunteers who will help you write your life story or help you write letters to your loved ones. We've got professional grade photographers who volunteer their services and create beautiful photographic images of patients and families. And that's such a lovely way to say to somebody, you know, you still matter and you're still beautiful and we still want to capture you at this stage of your life. So, I mean, the list really just goes on and on. And one of the great things about Iowa City Hospice is if somebody has a particular gift or skill, we'll try and use it. You know, I mean, I wanted to work on the legacy project, but I had a volunteer who was really interested in photography, who was the one who brought that idea to the table. And so, you know, if you've got an idea or a skill or a talent that you think would be useful, we'll try and use it, don't you think?
And even if you feel like you don't have a skill or a talent.
Exactly, even more important.
Yeah, I can remember a patient who had been at the hospital for a week. And when he came home, he was very relaxed, he was feeling good. He really didn't need a lot of attention from Iowa City Hospice, but his wife was exhausted. So the volunteer, went to the grocery store, went and picked up the medicines, that takes a skill to do that, but you might not think of it as a skill.
Right.
But what a gift to that family.
Absolutely.
That she could get some rest and be a healthy caregiver.
So,
well, no, I was just going to say, I was talking about all the unique programs and subgroups that we have, but the role that she just described is probably the most common role for our volunteers. They're simply there to provide support in whatever way the family needs.
and how can someone become a volunteer?
Well, go to our website, www.iowocityhospice.org. There's a How You Can Help tab, and under that there's a volunteer tab, and there's an online application process. So if you would fill out an application, that just gets right into our system and comes to me. And then I let people know, I follow up on those inquiries, let people know when the next trainings are coming up and that kind of thing. So.
Sounds easy.
Yeah, it's really simple.
We're always looking for office volunteers too, so if someone doesn't want to particularly lend their time to being directly with a patient, but would like to support Iowa City Hospice, call us.
Yeah.
351-5665, because we could always use help in the office. And we love we just love working with volunteers. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate having them there.
Okay, I'd like to close today with more personal perspectives from each of you, because I imagine that, just having this interview with you, I've almost been brought to tears a few times. Speaking of end of life things, it's such, it's something that can stir emotions that normally, just thinking about the end of life, normally you don't have to deal with. And I imagine if that's your job, where every day you're experiencing, or you're working with people who are dealing with the end of their lives or end of loved ones' lives, that could be very hard, very challenging, but I also imagine rewarding. Could both of you kind of speak to that a bit?
I would say, I would agree with you, it's very rewarding. And I don't work directly with the patients and their families, so I look at the staff members who do, and just in awe of what they do and their ability to do it. And that includes the volunteers who are obviously can be very emotionally attached to people. So as an organization, we try to put a lot of things in place to support the volunteers and the staff so that they have support and can be healthy and be with us for a long time. There's a saying that you can't be a good caregiver unless you take care of yourself. And so that is one of the things that we think about as an organization, is how we have this great group of people. They're very special to take care of people at end of life, and so how can we support them? So I know I'm not answering your personal question, but I do want to express that is an issue, and as an organization we really work hard to try to support our staff and our volunteers.
Absolutely. One of the reasons I'm constantly renewed by the work that I do here is because I've experienced hospice care as a consumer. So I absolutely know the difference that it makes in a caregiver's life, in a family member's life. And so sometimes, I do have to set aside the more medical aspect of it, and that people are actually dying, and just concentrate on knowing the support and care that we're providing for people. Because even though we're all going to experience the loss of someone and we're all going to die ourselves, it's a very universal experience. When you're going through it, it's very unique, and it feels like you're the only one in the world that has been going through this, and it's true. For you that you are the only one in the world. And when I had Iowa City Hospice, it felt like the cavalry had come. I mean, it literally I felt like this army of people had come to help me, and who had this unique perspective on what I was going through, and non-verbally communicate. Didn't have to say a word about it, but just with the integrity of their compassion and commitment, you felt that sense of support. So that's what keeps me going, and I have to say the volunteers too. It's a very inspiring group to be able to associate myself with, so I appreciate them very much.
Well, thanks to both of you as well. First for talking with me today, but mostly for just the work you do in this incredibly crucial field.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on your show.
Glad to have you.
Thank you, Mary.
You're watching City Channel 4. On TV, online, on demand, on Facebook, and now on the go on your mobile device.